So, to get us started, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that the Alzheimer Society of B.C. operates on traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of Indigenous peoples in all regions of BC. I'm presenting to you from the traditional territories of the peoples listed on the screen, where our provincial office is located on the territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. Our vision of a province whereby people living with dementia feel acknowledged, welcomed, and included. It'll only be possible if everyone has access to resources and supports that are barrier free. And that includes being free from any form of racism, including Indigenous specific racism. And on that, I'm going to stop sharing and introduce today's speaker. So today's presenter is Dr. Elizabeth Drance. Hello, Elizabeth. Dr. Drance is a geriatric psychiatrist with Providence Healthcare's Dementia Caregiver Resilience Clinic at St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver. Dr. Drance is transitioning from medicine into a coaching practice with a focus on dementia caregiver well-being, as well as grief and life transitions. And Michael has put a link to a list of helpful resources in the chat. Please do download that, and you'll also see a picture of Dr. Drance with her dad. Dr. Drance is a certified mindfulness meditation teacher and has personally experienced the benefit of mindfulness practice in her own caregiving journey with both of her parents. And on that note, over to you.
Thanks, Lori. Lovely to see you. And although I can't say lovely to see everyone, I know you're there and I can feel your presence. So I'm just going to share my screen. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really grateful to be able to come and share with you some ideas about how we can show up day to day in our lives, lives that are full of challenges, no matter whether dementia is in the midst of the picture or not. And some of these changes we can anticipate, and some arise very suddenly. The particular focus we're going to explore is the idea of mindfulness or mindful awareness, if you prefer, and how it can support us to reduce our stress and enjoy our lives when dementia's in our midst. So whether I am living with this illness or whether I am someone who is caring for someone who has dementia, or whether I'm a professional healthcare provider who's dealing with it. It's really important for us to be as present as we can be, and we'll talk a bit about that. So I want to express my gratitude to the Snuneymuxw First Nation. I am speaking to you from Gabriola Island, and I'm very grateful to be able to live, work, and play on this island, on the unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. So let's talk a bit about the stormy winds of mild cognitive impairment. I will refer to that as MCI or dementia. And again, this conversation applies to us equally, whether we're living with these conditions ourselves or we're supporting somebody who is living with this. And I'm wondering if you can imagine for a moment that you're out on a sailboat, and when you left the harbor, everything seemed to be quite lovely. There was enough breeze to use your sails, and you're really enjoying the experience. And all of a sudden, a big wind blows up. And in that moment, you can either be blown over in that storm or wind, or you can be someone who has learned to adjust your sails, right? Because the most important thing you'll hear, and you're going to hear it over and over again, is that we can't control the wind. So we can't control MCI or dementia at this point, even though there is, ongoing progress made with it. But we can learn how to adjust our sails. So I wonder if, and this will be interesting because I don't see the chat, Michael and Lori. I just see my slides. Do you know if there's a way that I can see the chat as well?
Sorry about that. Couldn't find my own unmute button in
No
the
worries.
hurry. Michael, do you know if Dr. Drance can see the chat? If you click on the chat down below, Dr. Drance?
Well, with
Slides, you
yeah,
can't.
with the slides, I can't.
So I don't mind just sharing what I'm seeing. And right
Okay.
now so
Okay.
maybe ask your question
Yeah. So
again.
the question
And
I would love to ask, what are some of the storms or the winds that are part of living with dementia in your midst? Um, the things that kind of blow up that we struggle with. So give me some of those challenges that you're working with. Oh, hold on. Now I'm seeing the chat. Let's see if I can. Mom not wanting to get up this morning for day program. Yeah, thank you. Mood swings. Yeah. Can be big or it can be little. Not wanting help. Yes. So that sense that the person I'm trying to support just doesn't want the help. Belligerent outbursts. So these sudden changes in energy levels in your communication. Unpredictability. Yeah. So Julie says big change of temper. Yeah, mom has passed now, but every day she wanted to go home. Yeah, thanks, Mary. Denial. Yes, thanks, Matt. And there's nothing wrong, right? So I don't need any help. There's nothing wrong, and I don't need help. Sometimes it's you who might be accused of needing the help. So yeah, thank you for that. No meaningful conversations. Yeah, yeah. Hi, Tobias. A strong sense of loss. Right. And forgetting to eat. So these are all sort of big issues or small issues in the moment, but they feel really big. Mom missing her granny and wanting to call her, but granny, of course, is long passed on. Or insisting to be able to do something himself that he's not been able to do for some time. And that's suspiciousness, that the person has. And just Linda's talking about like how, I'm assuming you're talking about, Linda, how to help a friend who's living with dementia, and maybe wondering how you can be of support and service. Yeah, so thank you for all of those. And some of the other ones that I was sort of thinking about too are things like, the actual illness itself. So the diagnosis, right? If that diagnosis has been made and you're feeling, yes, this is what is happening, I can't necessarily change that, can I? Or the unpredictability or the progression. These things are the part of the condition itself, and they're not going to change. And then the frustrations that you've so beautifully outlined. So insisting to do something himself that he's not been able to do for some time, says Marta. Yeah, so thank you for all of those, right? Not wanting to discuss her ailing condition, even when her loving children bring it up gently. Wow. Yes. Isn't that it's always hard to know when there's a sense of the lack of insight into this illness, how much is actually, anosognosia or biological, and then how much of it is just that sheer not just sheer need for denial to feel safe. And it's a really, those are interesting questions, right? And so a lot of the things that you're bringing up are things where we can't necessarily change them all together. Okay. But when these things come up, we can actually learn some skills and develop resources that can help us to deal with some of these big energies, and these big challenges, or the things that really trigger us so deeply. So a lot of the suffering we have in our lives and with dementia arises when we're trying to control the winds. So sometimes trying to get somebody to do something we think they should do, and they're having a hard time getting on board with us. Sometimes we have to look at, is this the wind arising that I can't control? And how can I relate to this situation wisely? Because one of the things that we do know about dementia and winds is that they change a lot, right? The winds shift. So you can be in a big storm one moment and it can pass through and be gone 10 minutes later. So sometimes it's just being able to assess, right, where are we in the storm and what is our wisest course of action? So how do I adjust my sails wisely? And to do that, we do need to learn some skills and work with wise resources. And let's talk a little bit about what those resources and skills might be for the trip. So we know that there are external resources that we need for this journey, and there are internal resources. And when we develop those external and internal resources as best we can, then we develop our resilience. And the word resilience, we'll come back to it in a minute, but resilience is a well of inner and external resources that allow us to weather the difficulties and challenges that we encounter without unnecessary mental, emotional, or physical distress, right? So there will always be feelings and thoughts arising, but we can limit the amount of that can get in the way of our actually being wisely dealing with the situation. So resilience, oh, sorry, I should have just said, so the external resources, and you would be able to recognize these in a moment, but these are the ones we often hear a lot about. So physical assistance, or financial assistance in making caregiving and work or living with this illness. Respite, so being able to have a break away. Adult day programs, so that for many people who are living with dementia, they are safe havens, and they are really wonderful places that they enjoy. And for care partners, when you find that beautiful match, or when someone is happy in their adult day program, it then provides you with respite. The supportive, working environments, if you're still a working individual. And then the supportive social circles. So as was mentioned, we really need to develop our people, right? Our friends, and help them to know how they can support us. So those are the ones we often hear a lot about. But then there's these internal resources that we also need to nurture as part of resilience. So things like knowledge. So we really need to understand this illness and understand how it's showing up for important people in his life, or for me as the person who's living with it. And thank goodness we have the wonderful support of the Alzheimer Society of British Columbia and their educational programs, as well as their support groups, that provide so much of that knowledge. Then there's a need to really develop our awareness. And awareness we're going to talk a lot about awareness and mindful awareness, but awareness allows us to see what is actually happening for me and for my care partner. And to know, to sort of sense, this is what's actually happening in this moment. We need problem solving skills. We need to really look after ourselves during this time and carve out significant times where we can fill our batteries. And that's true whether you're living with the illness or you're caring for somebody with the illness. And these are things that we hear have a lot of lip service paid to, but as some of the people who have met before will know, it's really important to say that self-care is not selfish. It's actually essential. We're not going to talk a ton about self-care practices, but one of them is mindfulness, and we'll talk about that in particular. We need to develop our ability to communicate and to be present in a way that that the important people in my life can hear me as best as they can, and I can work with my own emotions in those interactions. And out of that, we then develop a sense of resilience. So, and resilience, Linda Graham is somebody who's written a lot on resilience, and it's the capacity, here you go, there's the wind again, to bend with the wind, right? To go with the flow and to bounce back from adversity. So that's what we are all aiming for in life, and specifically when we are living with or caring for somebody who is living with dementia. So in our time together, I'd like you to meet your two companions and guides on the road to resilience. And these are two attitudes that I hope you are going to take with you from this webinar. In fact, if you take nothing else from it, please take these two companions. And one is curiosity, and the other is compassion. And so when any situation arises, these two companions are with you all the time. And we can grow our relationship with them when we are aware of them and their benefits to us. So by curiosity, we want to be curious about ourselves and what is happening for me in this moment, and curious for my care partner. So what's happening for them in this moment? Because a lot of the things you described in the when you were describing the stormy moments are about interactions, right? So the key phrase, there's a key sentence that goes with the attitude of curiosity, and it is, isn't this interesting? So if I'm losing my cool in a situation, I can either start to get really hard on myself, or shame can come up, or I can get really curious. Isn't this interesting? I've had this feeling before many, many times. Isn't it? It seems to always be, because as soon as I get curious, I'm going to get information that I can use to really support myself. So curiosity is the kind of antidote to judgment in many ways, as is compassion. So compassion for myself. Can I be kind to myself in this moment, no matter what is arising? Can I have compassion for my care partner, no matter what is happening for them? Can I be kind to both of us in this moment? And when I can't be compassionate for my partner, I need to focus my compassion inward on myself, because I know I can't be compassionate for them because I'm really struggling with my own feelings about the situation. So the more compassion I heap upon myself, the more I will actually have for my partner. And the key phrase for compassion is, may I be kind to myself just as I am in this moment. And that's an antidote to self-criticism and judgment. So welcome your two companions, your two new best friends, and your guides on the road to resilience. So we'll come back to them again and again as we talk. So I wonder if you realize how often we as human beings are lost in thought. So I love this diagram because here I am, I'm standing in the middle, and my physical body is present, right? Here I am. But where is my mind? And a lot of times, the mind is doing a couple of things. One, it could be running on autopilot. So, for instance, I could, I don't know about you, but sometimes when I get in my car, it seems to drive itself wherever I'm going. And thank goodness that a big part of my brain actually does know where I'm going and how to get there. I just don't have to put all of my thinking energy into that project. I need to have enough of it to be safe on the road, but oftentimes I might be thinking of something else. Autopilot is the part of the brain that is driving because it's very familiar with a place we're going. Or, for instance, if I'm getting dressed or doing up my shoes, thank goodness for autopilot, because if I had to think about it every time I did it, I would be much slower. So, autopilot is a gift that our sophisticated brains have. It's just not a place you actually want to spend a ton of time when you're with somebody else. So, autopilot's one form of thinking. And then these beautiful arrows that one is going towards thinking about the past and one is thinking about the future. So let's say something happens in our lives, and we begin to think about, um, you know, what just happened there? Why did it go off the rails? And then we begin to think about, what did I do wrong? What should I have done better? And we go over it and over it and rethink it and rework it. So that's another kind of thinking, and it's sort of active thinking, using your thinking mind per se, and you're thinking about the past, or you're thinking about the future. So if this happened, what's going to happen the next time this arises? And we can spend a ton of time either reviewing what happened or worrying about the future. And what happens when we're lost in our thoughts and feelings? So if I'm worried about the future, that's going to create some body sensations. Often my hands get warm and sweaty. My heart starts to go faster. Or, if I'm really thinking about the past and how things should have been different, my body will tense up and I can get tight. And then that causes more emotions. Oh, I hate this feeling. And then that causes more, oh my gosh, is this going to happen the next time? So we're caught in this loop of thinking, thinking, thinking. So I like to say we're often lost in thought. And it's happening all the time. We just aren't necessarily aware of it. So one of the things I'm hoping you're going to leave this discussion with, is an ability to recognize, oh, look, oh, isn't that interesting? There you go, curiosity. I'm thinking about and trying to go over and over and fix a situation that happened, and it's gone, right? The past is gone. Guess what? Oh, I'm worrying. Isn't that interesting? I'm worrying about what's going to happen, and the future hasn't happened, right? But we spend a lot of our time in the past, which isn't here, and the future hasn't happened. So what are we missing out on? We're missing out on the present, which is often, believe it or not, a lot nicer than where our mind is going. So my mind, this is Anne Lamott, who I love her writing, and she says, my mind is a bad neighborhood that I try not to go into alone. So, and why is the mind a bad neighborhood? Well, it's actually part of having a very sophisticated, the most sophisticated brain of any creature. So the brain takes current situations, so what's happening, now, or what has just happened, and it runs them through our computer, and it looks for similar experiences and how they ended up. Oh, right. This is this experience. This ends badly because, or this ended badly the last time. So what happens? I'm already prepared for this situation with that energy. And it predicts what's going to happen in the future. Yeah, it happened this way. Watch out. This is going to happen again. And what it predicts is always leaning toward, guess what? Potential disaster. And it's always attempting to avoid disaster. And so how do we avoid potential disaster? We think we can fix it by worrying. And that actually creates just, more worry and more tenseness. Why does the brain always move towards the negative? Well, the brain developed over thousands of years to keep us safe. Thousands of years ago, hundreds of thousands of years ago, a lizard in the jungle needed to be safe, right? If he wasn't vigilant and just sat enjoying the sun, he'd pretty soon become someone's lunch. So the brain developed a negativity bias. We're always looking out for danger. And unfortunately, the human brain sees danger at every turn as if we were a lizard, even though our lives actually aren't as dangerous in the world as a whole. You know, current situations which actually have a lot of our energy thinking about them at the moment, such as our fire situation, and many political situations, etc. But in general, day to day, our worlds are not as dangerous as they were when we were living as a lizard. So we come by our negativity bias honestly, but we don't have to be at its mercy. And we'll talk a bit about how we work to counter that negativity bias. So if you could, what's the outcome of being lost in thought? Well, here you go, unnecessary suffering. And if you remember, what we really want to work on as we move towards a resilient kind of perspective on our situation is to cut down on the unnecessary suffering. So here is the anxiety. So what if nobody likes me? What if I taste weird? What if I'm too cold? What if I'm too hot? What if I'm just right and can never live up to it again? So these are some of the, kind of unnecessary sufferings of a T that's thinking too much about things. So for us, what happens is we can end up with big reactions to triggers. We kind of have this constant dissatisfaction with how things are. There's a lot of stress, anxiety, depression. We go back to trying to control the uncontrollable, and we're missing out on the vibrancy of day-to-day life. So that's why we really want to recognize when we are lost in thought and come back into the present moment. Because we can't think our way to well-being. That's not what the mind was designed to do. The mind was designed to think our way to safety. So we need to use some other experiential strategies that tap into not the thinking mind, but the feeling, sensing mind. And that's a lot of what mindfulness is. Yeah, just let me catch myself here. I want to read you a poem before we move on to what is mindfulness. It's by Kaveri Patel, and it's called Dear You. Dear you, you who always have so many things to do, so many places to be, your mind spinning like fan blades at high speed, each moment always a blur, because you're never still. I know you're tired. I also know it's not your fault. The constant brain buzz is like a swarm of bees threatening to sting if you close your eyes. You've forgotten something again. You need to prepare for that, or else you should have done that differently. But what if you closed your eyes? Would the world fall apart without you? Or would your mind become the open sky, flock of thoughts flying across the sunrise as you just watched and smiled? So mindfulness or mindful awareness is the kind of way of being with life that supports us to have less non-essential suffering. We said we are in a club that none of us would have chosen to join, right? Whether I am living with cognitive change or whether I'm caring for someone with cognitive change, we're here. And what I most want to be able to work with is to reduce the unnecessary suffering that is part of what the thinking mind can take me towards. How do we do that? Well, with one of the tools that I find incredibly helpful is mindfulness. And what is mindfulness? Well, mindfulness is the awareness that arises when we pay attention to the present moment on purpose without judgment. Okay, so that sounds like it should be so easy to do. And we can pay attention. Sometimes we're paying attention to things that aren't the present moment. And some of the interactions, for instance, you were talking about with your family members, like, or as somebody who's living with the anxiety of the illness, sometimes we're paying attention, but to things that don't serve us, to a lot of thoughts. So what we actually want to do is to begin to pay attention to what's actually going on here. What is actually happening in this moment, right now? And we want to do it on purpose. So we want to interrupt our lost in thought to say, let's pause here for a second. What's actually going on in this moment? And when I can do that on purpose and without judgment of what is going on. So when the person I am caring for has lost their cool for the 900th time, can I really let go of the judgments about the situation and maybe get curious about it? What's going on here? What's going on here right now? And how can I be in this moment in a way that's going to support me and them to move forward? The practices of mindfulness, as we use in today's secular world, are primarily drawn from the practices of Buddhist psychology. And it actually exists in many spiritual traditions, but what I'm going to be talking about is drawn from the teachings of the Buddha. The toughest part of the practice is not the paying attention to the present moment on purpose. It's the judgment piece. We're so conditioned to assess how things are, whether they are meeting where they need to be, or whether they're not meeting what they need to be, or how we want them to be, or how we think they should be. That's the judgment that gets us into trouble a lot of times. So we want to begin to work at letting go of some of that judgment. So I love to say we want to stop shoulding ourselves. That's shoulding ourselves. And here's where your two companions support you, right? The antidotes to judgment: recall, curiosity, and compassion. And both of these attitudes both are products of mindful awareness and also grow mindful awareness. So they're really, really helpful to get curious about. So you see these two lovely folk who are out for a walk in the park. Which of the two of them would you say is present for the experience? You don't have to answer particularly, because I think it's fairly obvious, but maybe not. Which of the two people walking together is lost in thought? And which one, in all likelihood, is enjoying the walk most? Yeah, pretty sure it's not the person who's lost in thought. It's the person who is walking. And what are they doing? They're seeing what is there. They are looking at the sun and the trees, and they are taking that in. The person who's lost in thought is thinking about a million other things. How well do you think they're actually able to take in the moment and really enjoy it? So remember what mindfulness is. It's the practice of being right here, right now, in this moment, and just noticing what is happening, what's happening around you, and what's happening inside you, without judging or labeling it as good or bad. So how do I develop this mindful awareness, right? Well, there's three primary ways that we can develop it. We can actually develop a meditation practice, right? We can learn to sit, pause for a longer period of time, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour. Don't start at the half an hour. And we can actually use a way of being which involves focusing on something in the body, such as the breath, and really getting curious about it and really noticing the sensations, and notice how the breath actually changes moment by moment. We can do meditation practices where we actually send out loving kindness to people we love or to people who are struggling. We can do meditation practices where we simply notice what is present in the mind and notice how it passes. Notice what's going on, and all without judgment. And meditation is the supercharger of mindful awareness. And lots of people say, I'm not a meditator. I can't settle my mind. I can't go to nowhere. It's not about that. It's actually about, what is it about? Paying attention to this present moment on purpose. I am sitting here on purpose to pay attention to this present moment. Maybe it's my breath. Maybe it's the thoughts that are passing through awareness, without judgment, just seeing what is here. And the most beautiful part of meditation is there's no way to do it wrong. And the hardest thing about meditation is there's no way to do it right. It's a moment in time. It's a period in time where we pause. So that's one way, and incredibly helpful. Lots of people who are involved either in living with dementia themselves or who are caring for somebody with a dementia say, I don't have time for that kind of practice. So I'm going to introduce you to a few micro practices today that you can do, especially once you get comfortable with them. You can do them in anywhere from 30 seconds to a couple of minutes. And they are little boosters that are check-ins on what's good. It's like, I think I need to check in with myself. And so we'll talk about how we do that. The third is fascinating because people who say, I don't have time to be mindful, I just ask them, do you take a shower? Yes. Well, what would it be like to mindfully experience that water as it drops on your skin, right? Feeling the temperature, feeling what it feels like as it touches the skin, feeling the moisture, feeling your feet on the moist floor or the hard floor. That can be a mindful experience. Washing your hands, sorry, everybody does it, hopefully a few times a day, right? And when we had COVID, we did it often. But you can actually take that moment to say, what I'm going to, on purpose, be present with the experience of washing my hands, and put my attention in that place. And I'm not going to judge it. I'm simply going to notice what I notice. And the other experience that I know everybody does every day is eat. And you can take your first few bites of a meal and really engage with those first few bites of your meal with all of your senses. So you can, if it's a finger food, you can feel it in your hand. You can actually bring it to your nose and smell it. You can actually hold it to your ear and see what kind of sound it might make. You can then place it on your lips and see if it feels different against your lips than on your hand. And then place it in your mouth. Even if you're having a snack, having a few grapes, do that with one grape and you are having a moment of mindfulness. So I'm going to invite us to give it a try together now. Okay. And this is a micro practice. So you don't feel like we're going to be spending a lot of time in a place that you might feel uncomfortable. So I'm going to invite you to take with me what I call a 3-breath journey. And I'm going to invite you, if you would like, you can close the eyes. Why do we close the eyes when we do these kinds of practices? Well, we close the eyes because there's so much to distract us in our visual field. So if but you might be fine to keep your eyes open. If you do, I'll invite you to just drop the gaze so you again are minimizing the visual distractions around you. But just for a few moments, I'm going to invite you to take 3 slow, smooth, deep breaths. So breaths that are comfortable, but that are slower than you normally take, and breathe in through your nose and out through your nose. So let you be for 3 slow, smooth, deeper breaths. Okay. So I'm going to invite you to enter into the chat. What did you notice? What did you notice as you took those 3 deeper, slower breaths that you actually paid attention to? So that's my first question for you. And if anybody would like to share, this would be verbally, this would be a time we could certainly do that. Okay. I was tense and then relaxed my body. I noticed, thank you, Esther. I noticed my jaw relaxed. I noticed it was calming. Mary noticed, yeah, this is the interesting thing, right? My back hurt when I breathed deeply. Ha ha ha. Yeah, isn't that interesting, right? You weren't aware that your back perhaps had tension in it before you actually engaged in taking 3 slow, deeper breaths. Maureen says, relax. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. Distraction elsewhere. I'm not sure. Relaxation. Yeah. Yeah. So you were so I, Stuart, became aware of distraction elsewhere. So that it was harder to pay attention. My back hurt when I breathed. Yes. That's where we ended up. So I'm going to ask you, what did the mind do either during those 3 breaths or after you finished the 3 breaths? Did it give you any particular, are there any particular thoughts you were aware of? And just invite you to enter those into the chat. Okay, so, oh, there we go. Mary, just, I should do it more often. There's a thought. And notice, Mary, just as, because you're human, there's a judgment there. I should do it more often, right? And that's what the mind does. So interesting, right? Oh, isn't that interesting how I go from, oh, I notice some pain in my back, I should do it more often. And that's the kind of judgment that we're really getting interested in. Yeah, future thinking. So Esther thought, yeah, I can do this anywhere. And that's one of the keys of these micro practices. I can do this waiting in a grocery lineup. I felt my mind could focus. Yeah. Calming thoughts while I noticed lower abdomen massage as I breathed deeply into my belly. Interesting. So your thoughts, yeah, matched the energy of that calming belly massage. Yeah, lovely. Let me just see. Want to make sure Amy said, focus on the breath, that one thing versus many other things that could have been there and probably kind of were intruding on the experience. So yeah, thank you for that. And it could feel very strange, right? It could feel like, as was noted, like oh, I'm actually quite uncomfortable. What I noticed when I was doing my 3 breaths was that my posture had kind of slumped. And I was just interested in that and just made a slight correction. And a couple of you noticed some calm that came in with taking those 3 slower breaths. And some will have that, some won't have that. And I want to say that one of the most powerful aspects of working with breath is that it is connected to our sympathetic or parasympathetic nervous system. And the sympathetic nervous system is the stress edge of the wedge. And by slowing down our breathing just even 3 slow breaths, we are activating the other half of our nervous system, the rest and digest part of the nervous system. So that alone produces some calm. So, and you might need to take 5 breaths before you activate that parasympathetic energy or tone. But over time, it will the body will get more and more comfortable in calling forth that calming energy of the parasympathetic or rest and digest part of the nervous system. Yeah. I'm going to pause there. Lori, are there any questions that have arisen that I haven't been able to connect with?
Not so far. No,
Okay. So
you're keeping up
please,
with the notes.
okay, so please, if you have questions, this is really a lot more fun if it's a dialogue, but I can do it. But I love to hear what people are curious about. And yeah, so that's lovely. Okay. So I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about the benefits of mindfulness in the dementia realm, right? So whether I am living with cognitive change or if I am the care partner or it is my professional work to support people living with dementia. Just talk about some of the benefits. So I'm going to talk about each of these, touch on them in very short order. But what mindfulness helps us to do, it actually helps to focus. It helps us to be aware of what is happening right now. It helps us to calm, as some of you described. It helps us to react less, to be reactive less in challenging situations. It helps us to allow what is. So you might not want to accept what is, but you will allow that things are as they are. And then it also helps us to offer kindness to ourselves and to others. So let's touch in on those one by one. So I love this image of now and then now and now. Now is the most important moment for us at any time. And why is that? It's because you have to be present to win. It's kind of like Las Vegas, right? You have to be there to win. I've never been to Las Vegas, but that I understand is kind of the motto. You have to be present to win. Well, so when we choose to be present with whatever we're doing, things go better. If I'm distracted and I'm trying to train my border collie puppy at the same time, nobody wins. I'm not reading her energy, so I'm not aware of her energy, and she's not sensing that I'm actually there with her. So nobody really learns much from the experience. When I slow down, I can focus better on what I really want to accomplish. So if I have a task in front of me, if I slow down and come into the task and say, I'm going to on purpose really focus my attention, then things work far more smoothly. I make fewer mistakes. So mindfulness is in no small part training our attention so that we can pay better attention to the things we are doing. And therefore, we waste less attention. Mindful awareness is also important to be present in any interaction with another human. So we need to be aware of how we are in this moment and what we might be needing. So if I'm coming into a conversation and I'm very flustered, I can feel that fluster, and it's not so much thinking about the fluster as feeling it in my body and becoming aware of the energy that I'm bringing into an interaction. I will recognize I need to slow down, introduce my 3 breaths, and really choose to pay attention to what is going on here and now. So it helps mindfulness practice, my micro practices or my practices of doing my daily tasks with awareness or my meditation practice. They will help me grow my ability to do this. When I'm a care partner with someone who has a dementia, if I'm not really present in my interactions, I will miss my partner's cues that they are becoming overwhelmed. And I won't be able to show up in the way I want to or the way they need me to. And that is a recipe for unhappiness and, to some degree, perhaps unnecessary suffering. Practicing mindfulness regularly helps us to show up for what we want to do with focus and awareness. So that's the first piece. The other thing is that practicing mindfulness actually cultivates tranquility and calm, and it's in no no small part because it really activates our rest and digest part of the nervous system. So when we practice meditation, we take an enforced slowing down in our day. And the more we come into the present moment, the more relaxed we actually feel, and the slower the mind moves. So it helps settling the sympathetic nervous system and nurtures the rest and digest part of our autonomic nervous system, our parasympathetic arm of the nervous system. And this is powerful, activating this parasympathetic nervous system and letting go of the stress and the stress side of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic nervous system, because it reduces the amount of stress hormone that is floating around in our body. And again, letting or reducing our cortisol levels is very good for us. It's very good for our mind, for our body, and for. So the slower it moves, the more peace there is. And the slower our mind moves, the more peace there is. And over time, we get to be present for more moments of our day, and the calm follows us. Okay. We also learn to react less when we practice a mindful awareness. So, if on the left of your picture is a stimulus and something happens to us, we have automatic ways that we respond to those particular stimuli, especially the ones that really trigger us. And what happens if I'm triggered, I tend to react very quickly. And there's very little space between the thing that is bothering me and my reaction. Sometimes you'll probably figure that, oh my gosh, I got mad so fast. Oh, I lost my patience like that, right? That's this stimulus reaction. When we practice mindfulness and we actually grow our attention to the present moment, we can recognize when we are becoming triggered, and we can recognize when our care partner is becoming triggered by something because we're bringing curiosity into the situation. I'm arriving, I'm watching, I'm noticing my energy, I'm noticing their energy. And what happens when I can practice that way of being more and more is there becomes a wider space between the stimulus and my reactivity. And I can say, what I love to say is, I respond to the situation rather than react to it. And Viktor Frankl, who wrote about his life in the concentration camps in World War II, had this very powerful statement: between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space, when we can feel it, is our power to choose our response. And what mindfulness does is it grows that space between stimulus and reaction so that we can actually choose how we want to respond more of the time. So we're not going for perfection here, right? We're just wanting to see what's possible and to get curious about getting curious about our triggers. And when we do lose our cool, we want to bring in, guess what? Compassion. Compassion for our partner when they lose their cool, and compassion for me when I lose my cool. So mindfulness practice helps grow that space so that we can have a bigger space between being triggered and reacting. And that's what's called emotional regulation, right? Mindfulness helps us regulate our reactions to triggering stimuli. So I'm going to, and it's not funny, I said to Lori, I can't imagine we're going to have a conversation beyond an hour. So what I would like to do is to move into a practice. And this one is called the stop practice. And so one of the ways that I can grow this space between trigger and reaction is to pause and to learn the sacred pause. And that's what we like to call the stop practice. And each step of this practice is one of the letters of the word stop. So I'm going to invite you, if you are willing, to walk with me through this short practice. And I'm going to invite you to close the eyes. And the first part of the stop practice is to stop what you're doing. So we invite you to take a pause and check in with yourself, even if it's only for a moment. We can take a pause without anyone even being aware. And as I say, in the grocery store, I may not close my eyes. I might just check in with myself and say, I'm going to stop now. I'm going to stop everything. And then T is for take a deep breath or two, right? So feel the breath go all the way in through your nose and all the way out through your nose. So taking a few deep breaths. And I'm inviting that rest and digest part of the nervous system to come on board. And then I move into the O of stop, and it's observing. And I'm going to observe what physical sensations am I noticing right now. Maybe noticing a little bit of tension in my shoulders and my neck. Not trying to change anything, but becoming aware of what is going on in the body right now. And what thoughts are passing through my awareness right now. What am I aware I'm thinking? And then what emotions are present right now, right? Yeah. And then offering an opportunity to proceed, and the P is proceed. But before I proceed, I'm going to pause again and ask myself, okay, if this is what's going on in my body, and these are the thoughts I'm having, and these are the emotions I'm having, what might I be needing right now in this moment? And it might be a compassionate hand on my chest and some warm thoughts to myself. It might be, I actually need to go to the bathroom and, have a time out. I need to get myself some water. What am I needing? And then to proceed into the next moments of your day with this slightly enhanced awareness. So I'll invite you to open your eyes and come back into our time together here. And I'm curious, give you a moment or two to type into the chat what you noticed in that moment. What did you notice? So Julia's asking, do you have a visual for this method? And I'm assuming you're talking about the stop practice. And well, actually I do. Sometimes I envision a stop sign in my mind, and I walk through the S, the T, the O, and the P. And I've done it so much that it now feels like second nature. But I'm curious, what did anybody experience in that, in terms of, were you aware of what you needed? I notice the beating of my heart. Yeah, sometimes it's something very subtle. Linda noticed a sense of peace. I noticed that the stop practice helped me to relax and feel calmer. Isn't that interesting, Mary? Because we're not actually forcing anything, but by becoming aware of the body and our thoughts and our emotions, we do calm. So this is a slightly expanded part of a practice beyond the 3 breath journey. So it's something you can become very, very facile with the more you practice it. So thank you for that. Okay. That was our stop practice. So mindful awareness really helps us to accept that things are the way they are, right? It is what it is. And it might be in this moment. So this reaction that my partner had, or not wanting to get up for the day program today, this is how it is right now. And I can fight it, or I can sit back for a minute and acknowledge it. So it helps us to be willing to be with what is here rather than to fight it. Because if I'm busy fighting it, then I'm often not able to actually accurately problem solve what might help the situation. And so practicing mindfulness grows wholehearted, unrestricted cooperation with the unavoidable. So that's such a lovely term. Practicing mindfulness grows wholehearted, unrestricted cooperation with the unavoidable. And let's face it, if I'm living with cognitive change, there's a lot of unavoidable. So mindful awareness actually helps me to accept things and to recognize what are the things I can change in this moment, and what are things that I might actually need to shift my relationship. So shift my sails to, if you like. So we can't prevent the tangles, but we can learn how to be with them when they arise. And that's what mindful awareness helps us to do. And finally, what the world needs now is love, sweet love. It's a song from the 60s. And mindfulness practice actually helps us to develop kindness and compassion for ourselves and for others. So the more that I practice, just even taking 3 slow breaths, the more I bring on that parasympathetic nervous system, the more actually I can be compassionate with myself when when I seem more impatient than I would like to be, or when my partner is more reactive than I would hope they would be. So the more that I can pause and be aware of what's going on, the more I can have compassion for myself and for the other person that I'm with. And that shifts a lot of the unnecessary suffering. Okay, so we're almost coming to a close in terms of the formal part of our conversation. But I wanted to show you that one way we can actually practice meditation is by listening. And so what I would like to do is ask Lori, and she's going to share the bell meditation with us. And I think this meditation will be in the chat so that you can click on it and save it for yourself on YouTube. But it's going to be a practice where I'm just going to invite you to become aware of sound as it comes and it goes. And when the mind wanders on to the things you need to do next, I'm just going to invite you to keep coming back to the sensory experience of hearing. I hope you have a bit of a sense of how mindfulness or mindful awareness, which is the state of mind that allows you to pay attention to the present moment on purpose and without judgment, how it helps you actually develop resilience for the challenge of life and of living with dementia. And I'd like to end the formal part of the presentation with a poem by Dana Falls called Walk Slowly. It only takes a reminder to breathe, a moment to be still. And just like that, something in me settles, softens, makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life isn't a relay race, that we will all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for. As many times as I forget, catch myself charging forward without even knowing where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe, and be, and walk slowly into the mystery. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open the floor for questions. Oh, and I know that on the resource sheet, there are some ideas for you if you are curious about pursuing more about mindfulness and care partnering is a lot of the references that I had. We still actually are not doing the research we really need to do on people who are living with cognitive change. The early indications are that it really helps our attention and our relaxation. So Julia asks, do you have any strategies for dealing with someone who is resistant to practicing mindfulness, e.g. a caregiver experiencing burnout and who could really benefit from a micro practice but is hesitant? Oh, wow. Wonderful question. Yes, yes, yes. Well, here's what I've learned. I've learned that people need to come to support in their own way. It's a bit like, to be honest, this person that you're describing might be a little like trying to get your mom out of bed for adult day program when they don't want to, right? When someone doesn't feel like your ideas for them are what they want for themselves, or they don't want you to be right, and they don't want to give up control to you or admit that they need support, the biggest thing you can do is actually to develop your own micro practices and to recognize when the person is really struggling and to offer them kindness and compassion. And by you regulating and demonstrating the regulation of your own emotion, the person is more likely to be able to get there themselves. And Julie, you may have been talking about from a professional perspective. I would say I would want to be able to support the person through actual talking about something they identify as challenging. And we go to mindful awareness practices down the line. We might start simply when they're really stressed, just to say, hey, are you okay? I'm going to breathe. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths. That's all I'm going to do. Would you do that with me? And see what their response is. So I don't know. I'm happy to talk more if you wanted to unmute yourself. We could have a bit more of a conversation because I may not be answering your question, but yeah. Any other questions, Pete? Things that you wanted to know about this? Okay, thanks, Julia. The things questions you. It's a bit kind of an odd approach to care, to living with cognitive change or caregiving. But I've, in my own practice, in my own life, I was really grateful, particularly because my husband will tell you I have a very quick to anger reaction when things when I feel triggered. And if you ask him what has made the difference in our, however many year marriage, he'll say it's been mindfulness. And it was that way too with my mom and dad, particularly. I found it that the more I supported myself with my meditation practice and within the moment practices, the better the days went, and the more I could really appreciate my mom and dad for where they were, and the way they connected, which changed continuously throughout their illnesses. So yeah, it's a little different. Anything else that people would like to ask before we free you up for the rest of your day? Corey says, I just took a CBT insomnia 6 weeks class and discovered that mindfulness is a huge part of breaking the insomnia cycle. Thank you for sharing that, Corey. It really is. Um, uh, and there's so much around insomnia that is really helpful, because there's a lot about predictions, right? Oh, I am worried I won't be well tomorrow. I'm really worried I'm not going to get back to sleep. And sometimes being able to become aware of, actually, and in this moment I am fine, and in this moment I can actually invite that parasympathetic tone in, and that often really does help to break that overthinking cycle and return to sleep, or at least to be able to settle enough to read a really boring fridge manual or something like that, because that too helps us with our insomnia. So thanks for sharing that, Corey. So yeah, mindfulness is really helpful in the dementia care partnering cycle as well. Yeah. Okay. I feel sleepy when I practice mindfulness. Yeah, thank you for that, Julia. You're not alone, right? And I will tell you that one of the things that mindfulness shows us, just the same way someone earlier talked about, ooh, I recognize that tightness in my back when I breathe deeply, um, is it often shows us what we are actually needing, right? So when I feel sleepy when I'm practicing, it's often a really big indication that I actually am a bit sleep deprived. And so if I turn on a guided meditation, which is the best way to practice when you're beginning, and I fall asleep, I don't actually get too worried about it, right? I actually just recognize that, I may be very sleepy. Now, if it is a pattern, like I'm not that sleepy, but the rest of the time I do tend to fall asleep or feel extra sleepy when I practice mindfulness, there's a few things you can do. You can stand and practice breath awareness. You can just open your eyes when you're practicing. It gives a little bit more stimulation that keeps the mind more awake. Or you can, what was the other thing? You can take slightly deeper breaths more intentionally, and that can be really helpful. So yeah, there's definitely things you can do to work with that. Yeah, thanks, Julia. And Marta says, I had been interrupted by a visitor after 3:30, and I'm sorry to have missed most of the presentation. Will I be able to access this webinar later? And that's a good question for Michael and Lori.
Absolutely. I'm just going to also type that in the chat. The recording will be available. Usually our recordings are within a week, and it's going to be just at that 1 week. The person who does our editing of our videos is away from the office. We've let her go on holidays, darn it. And so it'll be posted up um, on our alzbc.org/on demand. And it will be up there within a week.
Yeah, great.
And now I see another question.
Yeah.
Can you recommend an audio guide?
For my
Person with dementia.
person with dementia for his intermittent insomnia. So by that, I'm wondering, Holly, if you're thinking about like an audio meditation for your person. And yes, okay, great. Yeah. Well, I would say a lovely place to start is the bell meditation, and I would recommend you do it together, because I gather when they are up, you might be up if you live together. But yes, it's easily found on YouTube, and it's only 5 minutes. And I would start with something that's really um, uh, generally no more than 5 minutes, because it's sometimes hard for the person to get used to bringing their attention back over and over. Yeah. So that's, yeah, definitely that would be one. And then the other thing you could do is you can go search out on YouTube meditations for insomnia, and there are some really good teachers who so let me think, who would do meditations on for insomnia. Perhaps a man named Pascal Auclair. I'll put that in the chat myself because it's a bit hard. Auclair. I think maybe, yes, who am I thinking of? Jonathan Faust is another one. And because I know they have meditation. So if you go Jonathan Faust, meditation, insomnia, you probably get it. And his meditations are really lovely and gentle. Yes. And if you want to check out short meditations, I have a few on my website, which is lizdrancecoaching.ca, if you're interested and those are accessible on the resources page there. So, do you have any ways or methods to persuade the person to participate in day programs or respite services? That's such an interesting question. It would be one of the things is that I find really helpful is to get curious about what is it that the person actually fears around going somewhere or being on their own or leaving the house. Sometimes, and so getting curious about what are the blocks for the person, that can be really helpful. Also, things like going with the person to the adult day program, and seeing it, working with the staff of the adult day program if it's about getting the person comfortable with that transition to the setting. But a lot of it is really about access, like about understanding what the block is and seeing how you can work around it. And she thinks people are bad or not respectful, right? So she thinks the people at the care facility, at the in the respite, in a specific respite place, or in general, she thinks people are bad or not respectful. Yeah, that, I guess all of them, so she is really in a place of, I think you would mention, suspiciousness or feeling unsafe with lots of people. And one of the issues, Julie, could be that going and being in a place where there are that many other bodies and that many other people, if she doesn't feel safe in herself, may be really hard for her. So in those situations, depending on what's possible resource-wise for you, having somebody gradually come into your home and spend time with you and her, and then spending time with her, is probably going to be a better approach. And also checking in on with the people who are caring for the person, as to if there are medical reasons why she is perhaps more suspicious and something that might need care in that way. So it's getting really curious, like, what is this um, uh, lack of trust that she is having? And it could be from the illness, but it could be from a lot of other things. So I hope that's helpful. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for how much you have shared and how open you have been um, with your stories, with your questions. Thank you so, so much, Dr. Drance, for um, the depth of knowledge and compassion and curiosity that you brought to this today. And I just so value the presentation. I um, just put up a link or a not a link, but a sharing a slide. Um, really would appreciate those of you who are still here. Please do share alzbc.org/webinar feedback. Thank you, Michael, for putting that in the link. There also is where you will find our recordings, previous ones, and this one will be up within a week. And as most of you know, alzbc.org/webinars. And that's where you'll find upcoming webinars. And if anyone has questions or concerns about anything that you heard today about dementia, if you want just to talk with someone and do some um, problem solving, some ask about strategies, please do reach out to our First Link Dementia Helpline. That is what we are there for. And I really do encourage you um, to reach out and talk to my colleagues. And so one last time, thank you so, so much, Dr. Drance. It was just such a joy to have you join us today.
Thanks, Lori. And may compassion and curiosity travel with each of us as we leave this time together. So take care, everyone.